Okay, guys, we'll kick off, I think.
So, welcome. This is the talk on Erasmus. I'm Ross MacDonald. I'm one of the STI trustees. Michael is going to do most of the talking, you'll be pleased to know. Michael, for those who don't know him, has been working with Sail Training Ireland for about the last 5.5 years. He's just left as manager. His background is in outdoor adventure. And he, with Sail Training Ireland, they've been very active in successfully securing Erasmus funding for sail training programs. So the objective today is to share with you what they've done, how they've done it, and also to introduce a couple of other people, Frankie and Monique, who've similarly been successful with Erasmus. And hopefully that's going to help you be able to secure your own Erasmus funding for your own projects in the future.
Thanks, Ross. Ross just told me that this is the 5th time he's seen me talk about this subject, so I'm hoping I have something new.
So it must be good.
I don't think he has a choice in the matter. So, yeah, thanks, Ross. I didn't name this. I'm hoping that I can demystify Erasmus Plus a little bit for you. And the main objective of this and the work we've been doing with Sail Training International is to try and empower other people to apply for this funding in the sail training world. What we'll try and achieve in the next hour is to introduce the funding scheme for youth exchange projects specifically, which are a project under the Erasmus Plus. I'll tell you a little bit about projects that we've run with Sail Training Ireland, and Frankie is actually going to talk about projects run in her organisation, the Maybe Sailing. We'll introduce... Sorry, come on in. We'll introduce Sail Training International's initiative, which is where we've kind of got more involved in trying to spread the word about it. And we ran a seminar earlier on in the year in Greenwich to try and begin that process. And a couple of the main outcomes of that were a comparison between youth work and sail training, and the development of your programme of activities, which will be part of an application for funding. So I'll tell you a little bit about that, and then we'll talk about the next steps. Ross gave you my background. I've been working with Sail Training Ireland for the last 5.5 years. Just handed over to Dara here, so if anyone has any questions about Harry's presentation, they can direct them to him. We've run multiple projects, and then, of course, Monique and Frankie and other people have run multiple projects as well. So I think sail training is starting to get to grips with Erasmus Plus, and there's huge potential there, and there's a lot of experience. Sail Training International we have had an ongoing conversation about this, as has Monique. We've always encouraged that they should spread the word about it, and that their role should be this role of empowerment. And eventually they started to listen to us, and then they asked us to do it. So that's why we're here. And they really have, as you saw in the presentation about the Sail on Board campaign, there's a real initiative now to try and get more trainees involved, being driven by Sail Training International. And this will be part of that. So a quick overview of Erasmus Plus. It's a big funding scheme through the EU Commission. There are 3 key actions. The projects that we achieve funding for sail training are under Key Action 1, and Key Action 1 funds youth exchanges, European voluntary service, and mobility of youth workers. I'm going to speak about youth exchanges only. They're the ones that are most relevant. But just to note that we have also used the mobility of youth workers funding to run smaller seminars. We use it to run our youth leader training every year, and we use it to run the seminar in Greenwich. So just be aware of what's there. And the aims of under Key Action 1 are, it's targeted at young people and youth work, youth workers, youth organisations, and you can see the aims there, the personal development, intercultural learning, active participation, which are all very relevant to us. So what is a youth exchange? It's groups of young people from at least 2 countries, minimum of 2 countries, but you can have multiple countries, meeting to exchange and explore the experiences and ideas on a range of topics. It's for 13 to 30 year olds. We've been running from generally 16 to 30-year-olds. Sail Training International is an interesting point. Their youth category is generally 25. I would argue that it should be extended to 30 in line with what the EU Commission is targeting. Your youth exchange should have a minimum of 16 and up to 60 participants, and minimum of 4 per group. So if you have a number of countries, each country would have to have at least 4 participants. As you can see, it's not just the EU member states. There's the EFTA countries and the partner countries outside of the EU periphery countries can be involved. You need to be a member in a member country to apply through your national agency, but you can partner with countries that are outside of the EU. The duration, an exchange activity, in our case, which would take place during a voyage, can be anything from 5 to 21 days long. We have run them up to, we ran a 19-day one this year. That's what's termed the activity. And then the last item there, the project can run from 3 to 24 months. You apply, for example, in the October deadline, you'll get funded to run your main activity in, say, the following spring or summer. Your main activity would be 5 to 21 days. That would be your voyage. But the planning and the preparation and the reviewing and the reporting can be spread over anywhere from 3 to 24 months. How much? So there's a travel bursary, which is a separate amount of money that you get based on the distance that you're traveling to the location of the project. So it goes up in bands, and it's generally covers the majority of the cost of travel. And then the amount of support that you get per participant is slightly different in each country. In Ireland, it's €39 per participant per night. So that doesn't cover the entire cost of a sail training voyage, but it does go a long way. And we can talk about a bit of co-funding later on. So I have a short video here I'm going to show you, and then we'll look at a couple of projects that have been run. If the technology works.
Discover what a youth exchange is. An international youth exchange is a partnership between 2 or more youth groups of equal size across national boundaries, involving young people within defined age groups to exchange their views, ideas, perspectives, attitudes, and to learn to work together and become enriched by their differences. A youth exchange is based on the needs of young people and is built up with their active involvement. A well-organised youth exchange project involves young people from the planning and preparation phase. It offers support for their active role in carrying out activities during the exchange meeting and empowers them to use and disseminate the results during the follow-up phase. During a youth exchange, you can work with young people to promote their personal development, self-awareness and self-confidence. You can use a youth exchange as a means of enhancing teamwork, which results in a sense of achievement. A youth exchange is a way of broadening horizons, facilitating the learning of new skills and raising awareness of new possibilities. You can use it to promote tolerance and understanding and challenge prejudices. A youth exchange is a mechanism that develops relationships within the group, the local community, and beyond. It helps young people to learn about themselves, their history, culture, and country. Youth exchanges offer opportunities for young people to develop competencies such as communication in foreign languages, social and civic competences, European awareness, taking initiative and responsibility. Become aware of socially relevant topics. Discover new cultures, habits and lifestyles of young people from Europe and beyond. Strengthen values like solidarity, democracy, friendship. The learning process in youth exchanges is triggered by methods of non-formal education, such as workshops, exercises, debates, role plays, simulations, outdoor activities. It is expected that learning and achievements from youth exchanges will be shared with a wider community after groups return to their home countries. Youth exchanges are organised to create new learning opportunities together with young people, to empower them for action and change, develop their social and personal competences, bring Europe closer to the lives of young people, and make an impact on local communities.
Sail Training Ireland, like I said, has run quite a lot of these projects. We've been in Sail Training Ireland was set up in 2011 following the loss of the Irish tall ship Asgard 2. After that was lost, essentially sail training was non-existent in the country. The government pulled the funding. There was no ship. There was no ships, no funding, and no trainee recruitment going on. So when we set out in 2011 to rectify that situation, this opportunity came up, and it created an opportunity for funding, but also a framework to develop good quality projects and to develop partnerships as well. So you can see the numbers of projects that we've run since then. Started in 2012 with a voyage on the Pelican of London. We've worked with the Gould and Lou, Spirit of Oysterhaven. You heard from Harry about the Morgenster. And then in 2015 we started running 2 youth exchanges each year and a youth leader training, which, as I said, was funded under that other bracket of funding, the youth leader mobility. 2016 the same, and 2017 Sarah has completed an application now for 2 2-week voyages, which we're quite hopeful about. So when all of that is summed up, by the end of 2017 we'll have had about 388 trainees funded under Erasmus Plus, and just over 4,000 trainee days at sea, as well as 96 land-based training days. So you can see the impact. It's had a huge impact on Sail Training Ireland's work. I suppose an important point about it is, and you heard it in that video, they don't talk about the actual activity. They talk about the educational program that's taking place. So when you're applying for this funding, you're not talking about a tall ship voyage. You're talking about high-level themes under the EU Commission objectives and some learning objectives that feed into those themes, and how to go about building our voyages and structuring them in such a way that you're bringing about that change in young people. So it's about the educational objectives, and it's about how you achieve them in a very structured and facilitated way. So it's not just letting the experience speak for itself, people going on a voyage, coming home, and that's the end. It's about a very planned and methodical approach to youth work on a sail training voyage. I'm actually going to, rather than going into the detail of our projects, Frankie is here, and I think it'd be nice to have a different perspective. Frankie ran a number of voyages the last couple of years, so I'm going to hand it over to Frankie for a couple of minutes, as long as you like, Frankie.
Hi, so I'm from Maybe Sailing. This year we ran 4 voyages on Maybe in partnership with Sail Training Ireland. Half of the trainees were from Northern Ireland and half of them were from Southern Ireland. And it was really, really successful. Broke loads of kind of barriers between what inner city kids in Belfast thought of kids that live in South Island. A really good example of one of those is one of the kids at the end of it said, "Do you know what I've really learnt from this? I realised that not everyone in the South is a farmer." So it was really good that they through it they kind of broke down these stereotypes that they had of each other. Now it was my first application for a youth exchange, a big learning curve, which is kind of what I wanted to tell you about today. So when you do your time frame, make sure you don't put the end date as like the end of the voyage. Give yourself some time to kind of gather all your information and things. Travel, make sure you keep every single receipt, because the British Council, who probably different to Legis, who are maybe a bit more relaxed about it because it's a smaller organisation with less kind of contested applications, but the British Council, there's lots of people applying for youth exchanges, so they are extremely thorough when you send in your kind of report at the end. And if there's any receipts missing, they will not grant that travel that you've already been given. So they are able to take back the money that they've already granted you. Don't think that that money is definitely yours. Yeah, you've been given it, but they can claw it back if they want. So, for example, I was missing a ferry receipt that took all the trainees from Belfast over to Scotland, and the voyage started in Scotland. And I was waiting on the ferry receipt, so they said, oh, well, you've applied for the band of 100 kilometres, and they actually only travel from Glasgow to Oban, so we're only going to give you €10 a day instead of 180. So then I'm straight on the phone to like Sarah saying, where is this receipt? Because I'm not giving them that money back. As soon as we had it, put it in, and that was all sorted. Your national organisation is there to help you, though. Don't think that they're there to kind of trip you up and kind of, I don't know how to say it, like pick apart your youth exchange. That's how I felt when I put my report in and they came back and said, well, no, this, and this. Get on the phone to them, go and see them and talk to them, because they want it to work, but they obviously have paperwork and they obviously have boxes that they need to tick. So build up a good relationship with your national organisation, which is what I've tried to do with the British Council, even though it's quite difficult. And so, yeah, keep them informed of what you're doing. Like I've just put in our application again, and I sent it to them first before I submitted it. I sent it to them and said, does this look all right? They said, yeah, it looks grand. Maybe just change this a little bit. Sent it back, changed a bit and put it in. So I pretty much know that next exchange is going to get granted because they've already kind of supported me on it. So don't be scared. If you're not sure, just ring them up and say, look, I want to do this. And they're there to help you. They're not there to kind of not issue you the funding. They want to give it, but they obviously have boxes to tick. And that's what I've learned is you get really annoyed with them at first. You're like, oh, God's sake. Oh, like they're just trying to stop us from doing it, but they're not. They're obviously, there's powers that be that tell them what to do. So another thing that we kind of learned from it is be very, very clear in your application what you're going to do. Because again, they go through it with a fine-tooth comb, and if you haven't delivered what you said you would, don't be surprised when they say, I want all that money back. But then ring them, talk to them, and there's ways to sort it out without having to kind of get into an argument with them. But yeah, I've definitely learned lessons from it, and I'm doing it again, so it hasn't put me off. Yeah, it takes a bit of time, but it's worth it, and it's worth it for the kids to see what they got out of it. And keep lots of evidence, and really make sure you read the guidelines that they send you. For example, one thing that I didn't read, and I'm sure Michael's made this mistake in the past, is that you needed a signature from each participant for the date, the exact date they took part, and the kind of your youth exchange number had to all be on this form, and you need their signature, email address, name. I didn't do that because we have personal details forms that they all fill in when they come on board. So at the end they said, oh, we need this. I said, well, I don't have it. I've got the crew list, which is signed by the participants. I've got their personal details forms. I can give you all that. No, they have to sign this one form. So that's 56 kids in the summer holidays that were no longer in college or school and had no contact with them to try and get their signatures. So that's like a massive lesson learned for me, is read the guidelines and read them again and again. because otherwise you create more work for yourself at the end. And it's all kind of online. You input all the participants and stuff. If you've got someone that can be doing that as the exchange goes along, so you're not at the end stuck with this massive thing with a deadline to get it all in, that really, really helps. But I would definitely go for it because it really helps, and it opens up the opportunity to so many more kids that might not have been able to access us without the reduced kind of birth fees that we were able to offer. Yeah?
Sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks, Frankie. I think an important point that Frankie was making there was about the national agencies. So the funding comes from the EU Commission, but it is granted through your national agency. Every country has a different agency that's administering the funding. The last slide of this has a link to the page where you can look up your national agency, and that's where the process begins. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a while. And I think the other point Frankie has made very clearly is it's a huge opportunity. It offers a really good framework, but you do need to be proficient in your administration and your recording and your reporting. And that's why I mentioned you get your project. So you have your activity dates will be 5 to 25 days, and your project can be 3 to 24 months. So you set the dates. So we would normally give a project about 6 or 8 months, and that allows you the time to do the reporting and the feedback and that kind of thing. So a little bit about our aims and methods. Like I said, it's an educational program, and it's all about that. So every year we pick a theme. Last year I think it was employability, and that is the overarching theme that feeds into the EU Commission objectives for the funding. And under that then we would have lots of learning objectives, and we would have a daily program of activities. And this is it's probably one of the biggest pieces of work going into this. And it sets out everything you do all day long throughout the voyage. So you have to put a program together that has timings, activities, your methods, and the learning outcomes, which is, when you think about it, a really good approach to delivering a good sail training program. So it's quite a good thing to do, but there's some work involved in it. But for us, it has certainly allowed us to develop really good programs. This has to be submitted. Hey, Robbie. And then the other thing that you have is you have leaders involved, and they also get funded. So each year we train up a bunch of leaders. We generally are taking them now from, as best we can, from a youth work background, and we introduce them to sail training, and we introduce them to the program of activities that we've designed, and we upskill them in how to, I suppose, bring their youth work skills to sail training. It's a lot easier than getting sail trainers and introducing to youth work. So these are some of the sample learning objectives that we would incorporate into that program. Things like willingness to take on challenge, environmental awareness, communication skills. This is all the kind of language we're all very familiar with anyway in sail training, but it's putting structure around it and building it into a program. Our daily program would involve workshops, activities, talks, and tools. The really most important point I would make is, rather than trying to run a voyage and then do a program of activities at the same time, take the things that we do on a tall ship, such as climbing the mast, and run it in a structured way so that you bring about objectives such as building confidence or communication skills. All of these activities we're doing all the time, so it's about harnessing what we do already. And we would use things like a daily journal, and there's a youth pass, which is self-assessed certificate. At the end of the project, the young people assess their learning objectives, and then they're awarded a cert. I mentioned youth leaders. I suppose the important point is they're more than just watch leaders. They are facilitators of this educational program. So moving on to the Sail Training International's initiative to try and disseminate this and try and essentially help you guys and anyone who's interested in running projects to do so, and to do so efficiently, and hopefully with the experience of the likes of us, and as Frankie said, the hiccups that we've had to overcome. If we can share that with you, it'll prevent you having the same hiccups. Sail Training International asked us to run a seminar. We got 5 organisations together last September in Greenwich. It was hosted by Greenwich Council. And we had Apervella, Association Juan de la Gara, ourselves, and the Maybe. So a total of 25 participants over 3 days in Greenwich. The objectives were to develop an understanding of youth work and structured non-formal learning. That term non-formal learning is a really important part of Erasmus. To develop a greater understanding of sail training as a medium for youth work, to develop capacity to work with others to develop and implement projects, for sail training organisations to develop a strong ethos and understanding of sail training as a platform for youth work, and to gain an understanding of how to design the programme. So what I'm going to talk about now is the 2 that I've underlined there, to developing a greater understanding of sail training as a medium for youth work, and then the design of the programme. So youth work and sail training. What is youth work? How can sail training be structured in such a way as to meet the objectives of Erasmus Plus youth work? What are we already doing within sail training that can be defined as youth work? And what youth work skills and understanding is already available in your country? For example, in Ireland, we have youth work is actually has formal statutory recognition. We have an organisation called the National Youth Council of Ireland, and under them there are about 50 large organisations that would have many local organisations under them. So it's a very defined process. So their definition is that they seek to ensure that all young people are empowered to develop the skills and confidence to fully participate as active citizens in an inclusive society. And the point is that Erasmus Plus youth exchange funding is specifically available for youth work. It's not for tall ships, and it's not for music projects or any particular activities. It's for youth work projects. So some of their definitions, the purpose of youth work, you can see, I suppose a really good point here is that if you took youth work out and put sail training in, how much of this would still be relevant? And quite a lot of it is. I mean, all of this is the kind of language we use in sail training to build young persons' self-esteem and self-confidence, to offer worthwhile and challenging new experiences, to build young people's capacity to consider risks and consequences and make informed decisions and take responsibility. So we do this. This is what sail training is all about. So again, it's about putting the language on it and the structure on it. The values of youth work then, again, these are coming from the National Youth Council of Ireland: empowerment, equality, inclusion, respect, involvement, partnership, voluntary participation, and I mean, again, very familiar to us all. The term non-formal learning is a really important one. The approach of non-formal learning as opposed to formal and informal. Formal, if you think about your school education, you're sitting in lines, you're looking at a blackboard, being told what to do, what information to absorb. It's all in a very formal structure. Informal learning, whatever you're doing in life, you're learning as you go. It's not necessarily planned or structured. You don't have someone walking you through that process, but we're all learning as we go in whatever experiences we're having. Non-formal sits in the middle. It has aims and objectives. It is structured. It has methods. They're pre-planned. It has someone that's facilitating it. So somebody is guiding you through that experience so that you reach the learning outcomes that were set out at the start. It's voluntary participation. Not formal learning doesn't tend to be voluntary. We all go to school because we have to go to school. What we do is voluntary. We don't force people to go on voyages most of the time. And it's facilitated by either professionals or volunteers. So youth work versus sail training. this is all stuff that was coming out of our seminar in Greenwich. So we had quite a range of people that had various experiences working in or running youth exchange projects. What we came to was that youth work is defined by a set of very clear principles, methods and approaches. Sail training is not. We all have our own defined approaches. Some don't, some do, but it is not clearly defined. So what we have come to is that to develop high quality Erasmus Plus projects through sail training, we identified a need to define Erasmus Plus sail training, or what was starting to become termed as Erasmus Plus youth work at sea. So to do so, we need to set a set of principles, methods and outcomes within the context of Erasmus Plus for sail training. This was, I'll skip that slide. So the principles that we came out with, an overarching principle is that we form a community with shared goals. It must be under sail, a platform for personal development, help to develop character, must be needs-led, empowering young people, diversity-focused, challenge-based, and active participation. And some of the the values that it should be based in are the words we hear quite a lot in sail training: respect, tolerance, inclusion, loss of technology, understanding, empathy, compassion. It's okay to fail. It should be an eco-friendly basis, respect for the oceans, focused on competency development, which is really important to in terms of the Erasmus Plus, to identify the competencies that you're trying to develop in the young people and to measure the outcomes of that effort, and to apply structured methods. And it should strongly support peer learning. I would say that this is a first step in trying to define sail training under Erasmus Plus. There's a lot more people that need to feed into this, and a lot more discussion to take place, and we intend to have further discourse on that. But this was a first stab at it by 25 people in Greenwich. So the methods and outcomes that we identified: non-formal learning, briefing and reviewing, discussions, debates, setting your own challenges, so goal-orientated, setting realistic targets, group supports, role play, reflection time, logbooks, peer-led. We have a really long list of these methods and outcomes. These are just a sample that I've taken to demonstrate. We all have many approaches, and I think we can relate to these methods. But the point is to try and define them and make sure you're putting them into your program. And the outcomes then: adaptability, tolerance, self-awareness, resilience, teamwork, communication skills, responsibility, new friends. So what we did then was we started looking at how we can apply this new set of defined principles and approaches and outcomes to what we already do on tall ships. So, for example, happy hour or climbing the mast. How can you make an activity out of that? With the what we're going to do now to try and break it up and make it a little bit more involved and get your input into it is to actually take an activity that we do on a tall ship on a regular basis, apply these principles, which I really feel we're already applying, and put a set of methods and outcomes around it. When you're applying for this funding, we need to do that at every step of the way, every day throughout the voyage. And if you do that, you'll be in line for Erasmus Plus funding. That's what they require. So what we're going to do is, Sarah, you're going to give me a little bit of a hand. Yep. Just teasing it out. We'll pick an activity, and we're going to just write up the... do you mind doing the writing? Yeah, a little neater than myself. Yeah. My writing's been described as chicken scrawl by Sarah. So will we pick an activity that takes place on a tall ship? Any suggestions? A favourite one that would be, say, very involving with the trainees on board? Examples?
Mooring. Mooring?
Yeah.
Yep.
So I suppose what's involved in mooring it from a practical sense? What are the steps? You're the guy who picked it, so.
I'm sure everybody else has experience as well as
Normally,
Wolf.
first we do an introduction what we want to do, then we look what is the wind, when we divide people to ropes and mechanisms, when we repeat what they must do when they get the order, and then we try to do so.
So you provide, you get the group together, you provide a briefing, and are the trainees very involved in the whole process? Yeah, so group involvement. And are there any support or measures you put in place to make sure it all goes well? When you're managing the group, what do we do to...
There's crew based at the different stations as well to overview.
So crew oversight. Would you allow the trainees to have as much involvement as possible, or would you guys do most of the work on board? Or
depending on the situation, I
Yeah.
guess. But in quite regular situations, they will do basically most of the work except for
Yeah.
the first line.
So actively involved.
Would it be fair to say that there's quite a bit of a difference between the first time that it's done and the last time that it's done?
Of course.
Yeah, the people who are overseeing would sit back quite a lot. So those are the kind of things that they like to see. If you can highlight that that's going on, that's really important.
You need to identify the risks and dangers
Mhm.
involved,
Yep.
or people are not familiar with.
Let's move first. When you start the briefing in the beginning, when you explain what is.
Yep.
It must be clear. Safety.
And one important thing is, of course, reporting. It means that you try to explain that you give the orders and you want feedback. But what is happening? Did they do something and what they achieved?
Okay, so
Reporting.
is it at the end? Is it the end once it's been done, or is it when you're
It's in process.
in process? Okay. So
I say you take on board
feedback, questions and questions.
Yeah, communication, I think, is a key thing there that you're saying. Basically, to make sure everybody understands what needs to be done, and for you to know that they understand it, they need to communicate back to you.
So I think it means, especially during the process, that you get back that if you need a line belayed, that it is belayed or that's still in process.
Yeah.
That's what you want to know.
You 3 times explain. When I say ease the rope, you take it away from the tree and then peel it away, and then when all ropes is gone and you are giving third time an order, please ease.
Yeah.
And then you are already moving to the engine and the rope is still on place.
Could
Yeah.
And
I?
explain what that is right down there.
Is it like problem solving? Could that be?
Yeah, problem solving.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
problem solving is very good.
Yeah.
Where about problem solving?
I think the point about the kind of active involvement, and as you said, the more involved, the more competent the group becomes.
Increasing responsibility.
Yeah, allocation of roles as well.
Yeah.
You've been listening to all those presentations, Russ.
And sorry, allocation of roles was it?
Yeah, so
What allocation?
Allocation of roles.
Oh.
You know
what
they're working
what
in
their
that
job
area,
is,
right?
yeah.
Yep.
Delegation.
Delegation. Can I put delegation across or allocation?
In terms of outcomes then, as learning outcomes for the young people involved in this activity, what are they getting from it? Yeah, go for it. Yeah. Go wild.
Teamwork.
Teamwork.
Skills.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. I'm just gonna.
I guess most of the outcomes can put in the can result.
And that is a really good point. With sail training, it's really versatile. It's really diverse. So we have a great opportunity to really reach a lot of outcomes because it's so dynamic and because it's real. There are real risks as opposed to apparent risks. If they don't let go the line, shit's going to hit the fan. So there's real responsibility. So therefore, they are growing in confidence by overcoming those challenges because they know they have.
You just did like 3 of them.
Sorry.
Responsibility is a massive one.
Yeah.
And it empowers
I think
them
you can
as well.
literally give an argument for every outcome.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I
As
would
it goes
agree.
along, it grows,
Yeah.
Towards the end, the confidence will be a lot higher. The first time they do it, they're probably going to feel a little bit like, oh, it didn't go so well, but talk about it. And say, well, what are you going to do next time? Well, how are we going to make this better? And then in the end, they're doing it all.
And I think what you're getting at there is probably the last piece of the recipe is what can we add to what we already do to make this a really good learning process for them? What supportive attitudes can we have? I mean, we don't want people to have a fear of failure. So how do we overcome that in this very important and real task? What supports are we offering them? Anyone?
Can you explain that again? Sorry.
Like, what supports, how do we behave as leaders around these trainees to make sure that they do involve themselves in this activity and they do take the lines and they do communicate and they do get these learning outcomes? Is there an approach by, a facilitative approach?
Debriefing.
Yeah, debriefing, making
Yeah.
sure you reflect on it and discuss it, and
Yeah.
they come up with new ideas of what might have gone better.
What went wrong? What?
improve it,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm putting this on the outcomes here. Michael.
We already decided that it's like
Outcomes are everything.
Everything,
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
So this is just
Keep up. So this is approaches, I would say.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Is this the equivalent of your methods? Non-formal learning?
Yeah, what we actually have on our much bigger list is methods and approaches. So how we're doing it, the actual practical step by step, and then how we make that a good learning experience.
I think it's important to make sure that they feel proud of themselves, like you did it, you were part of it.
Yeah, exactly. Positive feedback, positive reinforcement, even when things necessarily don't go 100% right, because personal achievement. Yeah. Acknowledging success and discussing where things go wrong in a positive light.
giving them positions of leadership. So maybe not straight away, but as the voyage goes on, you can say, right, you're going to be in charge of lines and fenders at the bow and talk to your team what you're going to do.
Yeah.
Overseen by a member of crew, but they're taking on that bit more responsibility.
So like drip feeding responsibility? I don't know if that's a term, but
It is now.
Just coined it. Anything else to add there? Sarah, last piece of
No, I
gold
think
you want to add?
You could nearly form a cycle here, you're starting off with positive reinforcement. Well, the task is set by drip feeding responsibility and then followed up by the debriefing afterwards. How did it go and what can you work on next time to make it better, make it a bit of a cycle,
Yeah.
really, that's happening on board.
Yeah.
Like peer evaluations, so talking about how each other's did and
Yeah.
Yep.
So like group discussions but that discussion would be led by, to a certain degree or steered kind of as we've been steering this discussion to get the outcome that we want. Non-formal learning.
In outcome, we also learn maybe some terms because we specifically use names of the lines, the name of the mechanisms. So is it official outcome that they get some terminology?
Practical skills.
Yeah, nautical skills.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We're ignoring the obvious.
Yeah. I'm just. Yeah. Do you have something to add?
No, I just wanted to maybe highlight the term transferable skills. So I'll often in the applications I'll write things like this and just highlight the fact that they're transferable. They can be taken. What you learn on board can be taken off and applied to real life work into
Transference. Yeah.
So I'm just going to put that down there just to kind of encompass everything that goes on can be.
I think the point that we can arrive at is we're already doing most of this. To get the guys in the national agency to realise that sail training is indeed a really good platform for youth work, and therefore to give us the funding, we just need to demonstrate what we do and perhaps refine it a little bit and plan it in advance rather than just letting it happen. There's loads of theory out there around youth work, and we all have access to various different ways of doing it, and we all have our own approaches. This is one I'm always going on about, the Sarah. It's the 6 generations of facilitation. So it, as you can see, it was developed over 50 years by outdoor educationists, Priest and Gass. Letting the experience speak for itself would be the first generation. That is going hill walking, going home, and how does it make you feel? It's you have learned from it, but it's very informal learning. Speaking for the experience would be the first step in facilitation. So that's okay. We're going to climb this mast. There's a good chance you'll learn how to communicate because you'll be shouting at the guys up above you and below you, and you might develop some confidence. And then that's speaking for the experience. So that's the next step. Debriefing then is how we start to bring it home a little bit more, and how did that make you feel, and start to make you realise how that did impact on you, so you become more aware of yourself and of how experiences impact on you. Front loading would be before the experience. You really kind of get into, well, what's your objectives? What do you think you can get out of this? Set your goals, set your own approaches, discuss the way you're going to go about it. Framing then is when you tell a story. So you say, okay, you might be doing this. We did an example when I was in college. We were sent down to the local lake, and the activity was lighting a fire. But the framing was, you've just washed up ashore from a sinking ship. You have 2 matches and you've no food and you need to light a fire. So how are you going to go about that? So that gave a story, and it gave, I suppose, motivation. And the last one then is actually essentially reverse psychology, where you say to a young fella that won't climb the mast, you say, well, you know what, that was probably a bit too much for you today. You're probably right. And then you'll probably find he might start to change his attitude. So that's just one of the many theories that are out there. But that would very much come under approaches. Thanks, Sarah.
Okay, all right.
So that's the design of a daily program. What you need to do with your application is to design your daily program throughout your whole voyage. And if there are gaps in it, it needs to be timed. It needs to be morning time, early morning, mid-morning, lunchtime, afternoon. You need to demonstrate to them what the educational activities are throughout the day. And I mean, you go into quite a bit of detail. Sarah, you've spent quite a lot of work on this year's one. Those are there as examples. We're happy to share that kind of information. So, you know, the experience is there. And I think we've just gone through the process of how to go about it. So it's really not rocket science. And we're already doing a lot of it. In summary, on youth exchanges, there was a budget set in 2014 of 15 billion across Europe for 7 years for Erasmus Plus. Now that covers more than just youth exchanges. I showed you earlier on, there's 3 key actions, so there's a lot of projects under that, but it's a lot of money. Ireland was designated 170 million in 2014. I understand that the designations have actually gone up this year because of money that hasn't been used. So in many countries, there are not enough applications to use all the funding that's available. So, I mean, it's not a small pot. There's huge potential for more projects in every EU country and the periphery and partner countries. We can all benefit from that. And obviously that will lead to more funded trainee berths. And I hope I've demonstrated that it's a framework to develop really good quality sail training. So going forward, the next steps are, I'll talk a little bit about the challenges. An issue has arisen, and it's only in the last couple of months really, where there is a new rule that the national agencies are kind of becoming aware of that they weren't enforcing, where projects have to take place only in one country. So we have had to schedule our program, our voyage this year to go from the Republic back to the Republic. It's easy enough in the Irish Sea. You can voyage the Irish Sea and still come back to Dublin. It does present challenges in terms of you couldn't use this funding to fund a voyage on a tall ship race. However, I would say that this funding is better applied to voyages outside of the tall ship races, where you have more control over what happens on the ships. Not to say you can't run a really good project during the tall ship races, but I don't think that this issue should prevent us from running projects in your shoulder season when the ships are quiet, when there's not as much activity. But it is an issue, and where Monique might say a few words about it in a minute. We've spoken to our national agency. There has been a discussion amongst all of the national agencies about this, and we've been told that it should be brought to the EU Commission's attention, and our agency in Ireland is willing to support that, as is the one in the Netherlands. So we'll be following that up and hopefully bring about a bit of change on that front. Co-funding, I don't have a whole lot of time, so I won't go into co-funding too much. It's except to say that we generally program these voyages to take place in partnership or around the same time as maritime festivals around the Irish Sea. So the ships get appearance fees to go to the festivals, which lowers the cost of the overall voyage as well. So you get your €39 per day per trainee plus an appearance fee to come to Dublin for the Maritime Festival or to Belfast, and then the balance of the cost is split amongst trainees or youth organisations. Your next steps to get involved, really, really important, is to identify your national agency. The link is actually embedded in this, and this video will be online, but the website is that website there, ec.europa.eu. Go on there, identify your national agency, begin to develop a relationship with them. They run trainings all the time for free. They're funded. You can go along, you can learn about this, you can interact with them. And as Frankie mentioned, if you have a relationship with them and they know you and they know you're working towards developing good projects, even if things don't go really smoothly on your first application, they'll help you through it. But it's important to have that relationship. Register for a PIC code. That's the first step, and you can't apply, you can't even start to fill out an application form until you have this code. You only have to do it once. The filling out the form is very straightforward. They will then ask you for organizational material, your structure document, if you're a limited company, you'll have memorandums, that kind of thing, and you can upload that. But the first step of filling in the form is quite straightforward. Get that, and then you can take the next step. And after that, we are going to have discussions this weekend with the various people involved and work towards setting dates for another seminar early next year, where we would like to open this up to a much broader audience. And the seminar will have more of a focus on actually getting partners together that want to run a project together and walking them through the application process. So by the end of that seminar, you will hopefully go home with an application ready to apply. So what I'm going to do now is just hand around an expression of interest sheet, and if you're interested in being involved in our seminar, throw your details down and we'll follow up with you afterwards. And the last thing is that out of all of this, we're starting to put together a handbook, and Sail Training International are funding that, and it will be your guide to Erasmus Plus for sail training. That's it from me. Monique, would you like to say a few words? And then we're going to open up to questions.
Okay, thank you. For the people that I don't know yet, my name is Monique Touw. We started the organization Windseeker in 2004. And actually the reason why we started the organization was to get more funding for youngsters to go on tall ships voyages. And through a friend of mine, we found the Youth in Action. Erasmus Plus was that time called Youth in Action. And I just called the agency and she said, great, go ahead, do this. We love the idea of your project. We've been running over 35 projects by now. We have over 22 partnerships, so partners in the other countries that we work with. Well, I don't even want to know the trainees days and whatever. It's a lot. I'm not going to repeat what has been said. I just want to make a few clarifications. Frankie said, make sure you do what you planned and that you do the program. We've learned that sometimes it's not possible. We once had an incident on board which was very emotional, and the group didn't do anything of the program for 3 full days. 4 days, well, basically the whole project ended. And it was not a problem as long as you explain what they learned out of it or why it changed. Yeah? Everything that is happening with a reason, and as long as you can explain it, you don't have to be afraid that they will ask the funding back. Yeah, as long as you do the report well and explain why it changed. One thing which was just said by Michael is that on the Youth in Action, you could do traveling projects. So go from one country to the next. And when Erasmus Plus started in 2014, they changed that rule. Most of the agencies knew our projects. So they said, oh, we don't see it's traveling. Yeah? Then we started applying in a new country, Belgium, that we had not applied for years. And there were new people in the agency. And they went officially to Brussels and asked, they said, this doesn't look like this is possible in the program anymore. And then Brussels said formally, you're right, it has to take place in one country. Unfortunately, they did ask this not informally, but on a formal meeting. All the agencies meet twice a year in the country that has the chairmanship at that moment. And it was said on that meeting. So everybody knows. Then still we had a few agencies that said, we do like this. Continue. We love your project. But we're now getting at the stage that we can't anymore. So you really have to start and end in the same country. As said, we're going to jointly with the agencies and with the politicians go to Brussels and ask for a change, that they do allow our projects. And I think we have a fairly good chance with it because we've had reviews. Sometimes they pick out projects to visit on site. And we've had that twice in the UK, once in the Netherlands. And they, every time they visited us, they said, these are the highest quality projects we've ever seen, because sail training is already structured. So if you have a good sail training program, they see that the outcomes, actually the learning outcomes, are much bigger than of other projects. For example, sometimes a project is about jointly creating a theater piece, yeah, or jointly having discussions about racism. That are other themes that or subjects that the youngsters then talk about during an exchange. Our outcomes and the results and the level of growth for the youngsters is much bigger. So the agencies actually love our project. So that's very important for you to realize. They really like our project. For example, in Sweden, we have now been invited to come to a meeting from the ministry to explain about our project because we have such a high quality. Yeah? So they really like it. So I think our fair chance that we can sail from one country to the next. I feel that is really important because if you do a cultural exchange, which is what the project is about, it is really nice to visit 2 or 3 countries even and experience the cultural differences. But again, I think we have to wait a year and a half because the whole political process will take a lot of time. What I want to talk about is actually the thing that Michael did not talk about and we're using now, and it's out there for you. Use it. We have started the volunteer projects, so the European Voluntary Service Project. We have had a Spanish girl and a Portuguese boy. At the moment we have a Polish girl, a Finnish girl, there is one from Denmark coming, and there's one from Sweden coming in January. How it works is you apply for it, you have a partner, you select a young person up to 30, and they come to your place for maximum period of a year. And basically they're going to work with your organization to do whatever is needed. Of course, we in the office do a lot of work which is basically normal office work. We write applications, we register youngsters, we write reports, we do promotion. It's what regular people do in an office. So how to make this into a learning experience for the youngster is by selecting youngsters that have goals that fit with what you're offering as a task. For example, we had Monica from Spain, and she was a designer. And then she said, well, I want to learn more about youth work. So that was one of her goals. Well, she could. But she also wanted to learn to make websites because she could make the drawing but not build the website herself. And I knew that the SIL Training Association España wanted a website. So we connected. She worked in our office 2 days a week on our projects and 2 days a week on building this website. She had a high value outcome, but we also, because we now have 4 people full-time available to write applications, make promotion for SIL training. It's fantastic. Yeah? It's even so good that from Erasmus Plus, we are getting €700 per month to fund this person. 300 goes to the sleeping accommodation, and the volunteer gets €420 from us to live on, and that's enough in Amsterdam. Yeah? So everybody's really happy. If you're a ship operator, it doesn't have to be a full year. It can also be half a year. So if you think, okay, I like this idea, and I want to have a volunteer in my crew for 3 months or 5 months or 6 months, it's all possible. Yeah? So I would say go out for it and use it. Yeah? If you have questions, just come and find us.